welcome. I think I've gotten around to most people now, but maybe not one or two. So yeah, if I haven't already, I will tonight. But welcome to the first session of TV Rise. I'm genuinely quite honoured to have Kevin here beside me. The sort of main theme of this year, I mean, when we first, even just 2 years ago, I think the event, we were talking about addressable TV in a very AdSmart-like way, in terms of, okay, we've got this infrastructure and we need to sort of impose, you know, try and somehow make all of this work so that we have a more data-driven offering. This year kind of feels the first year where you can sort of say with confidence that OTT is really very much the future. I think go back to Sky again, their announcement that they're going all in on OTT and set-top boxes will be a thing of the past. It's something that was very difficult for many in the TV industry to say for quite some time. So for many people in the room, and for many companies in the room, the shift towards OTT is a new thing. Kevin is one of the few people in the industry who OTT is a pretty old thing. He's been doing it a long, long time. If you're trying to find anyone else in the world who's been selling OTT, I couldn't really...
It would be hard.
It would be hard, yeah.
It just makes me feel old.
It is. Well, you are old, but yeah. But anyway, so just give you a quick overview of Kevin and his background. He started off, he was doing one or two different things before, but in terms of what's relevant to this conversation, he kick-started his career at a company called Unicast, which were one of the early pioneers of rich media. That was back in '99. I was just coming out of university.
Me too.
Yeah. After that, he went to the ad tech side, working at DoubleClick and Audience Science. He moved on to become VP of Sales at NBC Universal. From there, where he sort of did quite a long stint, he was SVP of Sales for Hulu. And you were saying earlier that you were originally there before Hulu even had a name.
My check said new site.
New site, yeah.
My wife said, "Do you have a job?"
Yeah.
New site LLC, and it was a check. They actually handed you a check.
It
was terrible, but it worked out.
After that, he became Global Chief Revenue for Shazam, which we're going to be talking about later. Shazam are still one of the companies I'm still most fascinated with. From there, he went on to become head of sales for Fullscreen and the Otter Media companies. I'm sure most of you know Fullscreen, but the leading MCN of the MCNs?
Maker and Fullscreen, sort of depending on the year, with a number of influencers neck and neck. But yeah, one of the big ones.
Yeah. He holds a number of advisory roles, which we won't go into. Yeah. That's like easy money for showing up for the odd meeting and a beer. And now he's Chief Sales Officer for Vevo. And last year, under Kevin's tenure, Vevo's revenue jumped 30% to 650 million, up from 500 million the year before. And Vevo is on course for profitability this year. That was the TV Rise effect that you came last year.
Yeah,
put the pieces in place.
This is where it all happened.
Yeah, exactly. So you can all look forward to a bumper 2018. Okay, so just kicks off. So, you know, as I said, you've been working in rich media since 1999. Back then, are you surprised that it's taken us this long to get to the point where we're here today, where we're essentially talking about this OTT thing is finally going to really blow up?
Yeah, I'm not surprised because it just follows the bandwidth availability, you know, by country. And Unicast was a early rich media company that patented and kind of perfected the art of pre-caching large file sizes. So in a slow bandwidth environment, you could get a rich experience, you know, a video-like experience. And the product itself, which had a very silly name, but was dubbed the internet's first television commercial. And it was sight, sound, and motion. It was almost the equivalent of a flicker animation to get you at least the idea of video as you surfed between pages. And if you think about what we were doing, the entire internet was text-based. There really wasn't video, to tell the truth. It was the most obvious point, break between the show, page opposite edit that you could get when you switch from one page to the next. So yeah, I mean, I think the bandwidth was a big a big barrier to get over, and it persists today. I mean, the latency is still a big problem on the web, and that's why you see mostly short-form video. But I understand the reasons why it's taken this long, and I think sometimes technology fights itself a little bit. The requirements for innovation outpace the infrastructure to support it. So it's an ongoing process of trying to get high quality at mass availability.
But back then, did you think it's going to take maybe 5 years or 10 years and this will all be functioning? Or was that even an idea then? Was it just about making the internet work?
So, I mean, unicast was one thing. We always talked about 56K modems, and we thought the DSL was like the greatest thing in the world. But even early days at Hulu, we really obsessed over bandwidth, came up with multi-bit rate streaming, edge caching, which literally put the file, a full television show, and the ads themselves out on the closest possible server to your consumption, and incurred larger costs in order to do that. So if you're in the business and you pay very close attention to the bandwidth itself and the kind of the infrastructure that supports it by country, because it actually varies greatly by country. And the U.S. is on the lower end of the food chain with the available bandwidth that's there. You can fully map it to the quality of the video that's being consumed, and quality therefore shows you how much video will be consumed, because people want the highest possible quality. So yeah, I mean, I think it's taken a little bit longer in this last leg, but what's most interesting to me is that IP-delivered television isn't fully pervasive. There's still other methods of delivery for television assets, even in a linear format. I think the internet is strong enough, and the bandwidth is strong enough, and the availability is there to have fully delivered IPTV, at least in major markets.
I said we were going to talk about Shazam again. I saw just, I think it was last week, Tom Goodwin from Zenith, who's one of the social media celebrities. He sort of said, which technology still amazes you? I think half of the answers were saying Shazam. Yeah. It's still an app that people go, it blows their mind. I can remember our first New Video Frontiers event having Shazam along, and the TV strategy. The TV was a big part of that strategy then, and that was during your time there.
Yeah, it was one of the things that we brought a team in to do, was to try to build out the television strategy. We looked at it was really kind of put in the box of second screen, if you will, and the ability to connect to a television audio, recognizing what was actually being shown, and either participate in it, augment that, or be able to interact. And I think it was a bit before its time, to be fair, and I think while it worked very well, Shazam meant something different to people who had the app on their phone. It meant music discovery. And the most associated word when people say Shazam in the app Shazam is magic. They think it's magic. They have no idea how it works, but it just works. And it works very, very quickly. It's one of the better instances of search in the world, literally. And if you think about who's trying to acquire Shazam currently, there were lots of technology companies that tried to replicate that search algorithm and that cataloging of music, and they honestly weren't able to. So it was a really innovative piece of technology that lasted to this day, and it's been around since 1999, which is crazy. And it launched in the UK in, I think, 2001, Text 2580. And really the baseline patents that exist are still the same. That's how the technology still works today.
Moving on a bit to Hulu. You were there from, was it 2007?
Yeah, from 7 to 13, yeah.
So once again, Hulu, very obviously one of the OTT pioneers. Mm-hmm. So I think even today, there's one of the core themes of this event and past events has been the lack of understanding, the lack of education. In 2007, when you were going out to sell Hulu, what was the reception by the market from buyers?
Yeah, we kind of went back and forth on this. Early days at Hulu, it was very much a digital property. It was sold into digital budgets, and we were getting digital video. It was on television shows, but the notion that television shows would be viewed en masse on laptops, which was only available at the time on laptops and then mobile web, it was absurd. It was a bit crazy. Just again, bandwidth constraints, availability hadn't really existed prior to that. So it was hard. It was definitely hard. People forget that Hulu's this thing, this amazing technology and business service today that sells out its entirety of inventory, a little bit more than halfway through the year. But we had way more inventory than we had demand. We had unique problems for the service, which was a relatively small number of people consuming tremendous amounts of video, and we had to build an ad sales business that solved for frequency. The frequency issue was massive, and we not only went out and just sold lots more advertisers in a national sense, but we opened up practices for local advertising. We opened up practices for direct response advertising, Hispanic advertising, multicultural, just to get variety, so a user didn't see the same ad over and over again when they were watching egregious amounts of video per week, 20 hours a week. And it was a really cool way to build a business, because at the end of the day, once the volume came, we had this huge base of advertisers from which to draw from and grow with the business. And even today, about 40% of Hulu's business is local advertising. And that just comes from a problem that needed to be solved for a totally different reason that is a really big benefit of that business today.
One of the things at this conference is, as event organizers, we're always looking for the sexy new thing. And I suppose the three sort of competing technologies at the moment, the ones that are catching my eye in relation to video and TV are, I'm not necessarily advocating either, but blockchain, AI, and VR. And just as a sort of high-level question, which of those three are you genuinely excited about, and is there any of the three that you think are overhyped?
So I don't think anyone is overhyped. I think some are more relevant today than others, and I think virtual reality will have its time. It's not there yet. I think there's too many companies participating in VR right now. There's no distribution for that type of content, and there's really a fairly large barrier to quality that can be designed, developed, distributed in that world. Blockchain to me is just it's a universally applicable technology solution, and for most video distributors, it really comes into play in subscription and transactions and those types of things. And it seems to me to be just a given. It's just infrastructure that you should have. It's a protection. It's an ability to scale, and it's going to be something that I think every business uses. AI is kind of interesting. For me, when I look at the big problems that exist in the world of video, it's how do you find stuff? Where does it surface? Do you have the proper platform, version? Do you have the right device? And I think there's levels of artificial intelligence or algorithmic search that can solve for that. I still think there's a huge opportunity for disruption of YouTube. YouTube I look at as the largest MVPD that's ever existed, right? It's the largest video provider in the whole world. And the reason why it's the largest video provider and the most successful video provider in the whole world is that it's the second largest search engine in the whole world. And it just makes things easy. It's a direct link to the video that you want, when you want it, where you want it. It's not the greatest quality. It is not the greatest economic model. It's not even the greatest experience in general with regards to finding a video and then getting a recommendation on your next video. But it just works, and it works every time, no matter where you are or what you're doing. And I think with artificial intelligence, you have the ability for other types of devices, other types of platforms, be it virtual MVPDs, be it OEMs in the living room that have higher processing power, have voice activated search, have things that can really break through just the ease of use that Google and YouTube represent. I think that is an opportunity to break up what is currently a really heavy monopoly in the video space, which is YouTube, and potentially give better economic opportunities for the professional content that's generated, better economic opportunities for the kind of the influencer or user-generated content that's out there. And I think from a user's perspective, you shouldn't have to wonder what app your show is on. The show is the brand. Your network's not the brand. Your platform's not the brand. It's the show itself, or maybe even the star. Maybe even just the star of the show is what you're looking for. And you have to be very cognizant of that. So a layer of search, a layer of access that could sit over top of the app culture, or in the case of places like Netflix and Hulu, a pure aggregator that just has it all. And it has it all in a different environment than what YouTube necessarily represents. So I think it's a hybrid of those two things. And the technology is very difficult there. Obviously, you've got baseline platforms of iOS and Android that are super different, and you have to solve for both of them, and they literally change like the weather. So it's a very expensive task to have engineers that develop and update for that. But what would be really cool is if you had a search bar on your television and you could just speak into it and say, hey, I'd like to watch UK Office Season 3, that the UK Office Season 3 would come up right away. First episode all the way through, regardless of app, regardless of device, regardless of connectivity, and have some form of monetization that would go along with it, whether it's subscription or ad support or both. And that's a long way off, but it's possible. It's just a matter of not just technology, but cooperation and licensing, and I think a business model that suits a professionally generated content piece or a library that just does not exist today. That's why you don't see full episodic, shows on YouTube. It doesn't support the studio model. It doesn't make enough money for the folks that spend $300,000 to $3 million an episode on a television show, or any show, whether it starts in television or otherwise. It just doesn't support it. So there's a lot of opportunity there to make business better and to be able to support the types of quality that people enjoy today on linear TV.
One of the things I think from most people in this room, I think you usually straddle the TV world and the digital world. At the beginning, sort of 5-6 years ago, you would commonly encounter sort of the perception that the TV industry is completely behind on digital, or either ignorant about it, or aren't moving quickly enough. Would you agree with that today, or do you feel that the TV industry is starting to accelerate in the right direction?
So I'm kind of a funny one, right? So I came from the digital world. I've been in digital for a very long time. Have disrupted a lot of TV businesses along the way, some with the support of the network, some without. I think digital's the shitty solution, honestly. I think television has it figured out. They get to reach mass audiences. They do it with the most high-quality creative. They do it in the most impactful way. They can measure reach being a lost art in the marketing world. Targetability is too high of a focus, and it kind of it fragments your inventory too greatly. So marketers and media buyers, they need to understand, and I think many do, honestly, that you have to have a balance of both, sort of a barbell strategy of brand and direct response. And television has the best opportunity, whether it's OTT, linear, or even mobile consumption, that you have the ability to do both at all times. You have a data set, you have an audience target that hopefully, if your content can reach that many people, that you can have a mass appeal and a storytelling environment. And I think that digital folks could learn a lot from television, from mixed marketing models that existed for 50 years that know how many boxes move off a shelf when you buy a certain number of rating points in a location. And the race to the bottom in digital for me, be it with cost per clicks, cost per views, different types of marketplaces, RTB, I think is highly overrated. And I've never sold a television ad in my life, but it's all I talk about, because I look at the $70 billion ad market in the United States, with $5 billion having floated out of it in the last 2 years, and Vevo and Hulu and YouTube, although YouTube doesn't think this way, they would have the opportunity if they did, to really just drive at those dollars and to try to present really brightly lit, safe environments for people to buy in, where they can reach massive populations and measure that population, where they can have the ability to transact with the same currency and with the same measurement methodology that they do in TV. And those are the things that we've always built at the businesses that I've worked in, and it works famously well. It's getting a language barrier broken down and not getting into the muck of what I think is too technically deep for major marketing and major advertisers to understand.
You guys, one of the things where we had our prep call, you sort of mentioned that you describe Vevo as a YouTube-first company. Now, I'd say not a week goes by where I don't hear of a company going under because they're too dependent on a third-party platform they don't control. Yeah. Where's Cameron? Ducking down. Yeah. Cameron's from Facebook, in case anyone who doesn't know. Yeah. So, are you exposed to risk? That YouTube could you're completely dependent on them as a platform. Well, not completely, but largely. How do you mitigate that risk?
Yeah. First, I think whenever you work for a company, or companies that I look at and I like to work for, are people that own the content or have some form of exclusive license to the content. That right away mitigates your risk, right? I look at YouTube as an MVPD. They're just a distributor. They're one of the largest distributors, so we use them in a mass majority of our inventory. What I always kind of marvel at with YouTube is that they never bifurcate your experience or your economic opportunity, whether it's a kid in his bedroom talking about his day in high school or Rihanna on stage or in a music video that costs $3 million. That seems strange to me, so I hold sort of a skepticism as to what the opportunity moving forward will be for professional content as it comes to YouTube's distribution. However, the music industry for a very long time has had a couple different challenges in front of it. One is piracy, as we all know. The most disrupted business as it comes to piracy, mainly because of file sizes. Again, back to the bandwidth question. I can text you a music video today. It's a 4-minute piece of video, and it'll be fairly degraded. It's totally fine. You could watch it. And you can't do that with a television show. You can't do that with a movie. So you have to be really careful about the way it's distributed, and it's a mass appeal type of thing. As well, in the music label world, music videos represent promotion, not just monetization opportunity. It's promotion. It's the things that people have as the crown jewel of the representation of their art in a visual medium, and that lets you, or promote you to listen to their music more and more. Perhaps buy it, subscribe, queue it up in the playlist more and more. So that has a very big part of the music video's role in life. So YouTube serves its purpose. But what I like to do, and when we talk about marketers and advertisers, they want to buy on YouTube because it represents so much reach, but they want to do it in a brightly lit place. And if you think about Vevo as a professionally generated set of inventory, and there's plenty of them, whether it's represented by a television network. I think about all the late night formats that work so well in short form on YouTube, the Fallons and Kimmels and Cordons. That's the prime time of YouTube. And if you look at Google Preferred or then wider in the auction, TrueView or something other like that, that's the run of schedule, right? That's the day, the late, the overnights. And so companies that can protect themselves from that glut of inventory and really the devaluation of that inventory as it aligns with other user-generated content are the ones that can sell you prime time first and prime time only. And that's how we position ourselves. We really do something entirely different. We'll sell you the artist, we'll sell you the video, we'll sell you the genre, we'll sell you the audience, and we'll do that all in a bundle, as would a lot of the other folks that we mentioned. But it's still not, it's still not an auction. It's not a bidded environment, and that's a very important distinction. We offer programmatic guaranteed, but it's fully transparent. It's set on a rate card that we negotiate with the advertising agencies, and it's brightly lit. And in the planning and the reporting phase, you knew what you were getting in both places. So different, truly different. It's not a blinded auction.
I'm just talking about the buy side. I mean, again, as a chief sales officer, your role or the role of your team is to sort of pinpoint the buyers within agencies or at advertisers. I don't think I've ever seen an agency role with OTT or it just, and we were always like, who do we talk to? Do we talk to the trading desk? And they're kind of, head of AV is like, yeah, I do a bit, but I've got, all this other stuff to think about that often is bigger scale. The TV guys are kind of like, OTT what? What have you seen? I mean, you've seen this for many years. I'm sure it's a problem you've encountered. Do you think the agencies are dedicating enough resource to understanding this new world and to sort of having dedicated teams tasked with doing it? Or is it just too early for them?
No, it's not too early. I actually think it's the agencies themselves have already gone through a few evolutions of how they tackle that problem. And in lots of cases, each holding group tackles it differently as a matter of competitive differentiation. They'll promote they'll promote a consolidated team as competitively differentiated. They'll promote an expert, for each discipline as competitively different. And I don't think there's any right answer today, but what I've seen work for us at least is kind of a sight, sound, and motion approach. Wherever there is video, it doesn't matter with the screen, it doesn't matter the content it's associated with, that they want to look at that, the agency and the buyer, the investment arm, wants to look at that as an unduplicated audience, right? They're trying to sort out some way of planning, buying, counting, all of those sight, sound, and motion impressions in a way where they can avoid the mass amount of duplication. And so, I've seen that executed on an upfront, which is typically how you would buy, because you're factoring in television along with it. Television is bought in the upfront, and there is a finite amount of inventory that needs to be secured. But it's done in different ways through the investment teams at the holding groups. And what I've liked recently with all of the holding groups that you've seen is they've really eliminated the amount of partners that they're working with. They've realized that there is just duplication and additional frequency and not a whole lot of additional reach way down the tail of their publisher lists on their buys. So they've consolidated that, and I think it's made them more efficient. It's made them, be able to consolidate their dollars in certain places and get dollar volume discounting. And at the end of the day, a lot of the business that they win is predicated on price and procurement. So I think that's been a benefit, and we've offered efficiencies for spending more money. It's a super easy formula, right? In college, I swear I took an economics class that said supply and demand is important. So, as you constrain that supply with higher levels of demand, you can balance out your pricing. But today, if there's more supply than there is demand, your prices can go down and you can afford a lot higher fill rate. And that's the game that we play. We play just like you would in television. Hulu does the same thing. Google is trying to do the same thing with their preferred product. It's the top 5% of YouTube. I kind of call it the top 5% of infinity. Do the math. But they're trying, right? They're trying to solve it in a way that helps all of their constituents, and it's a tough problem to solve. The television networks have done this for ages and done it super successfully. They're selling less inventory than they ever have at higher prices than they ever have. It's a genius business model. I love it. It's why I talk about it all the time. I'm like, that's smart. Now, if you're a buyer, it's kind of a bummer, but they get it too. It's still a super effective way to reach audiences. It's a super meaningful way to align yourself with content that gives your brands a halo in the inventory that's delivered. And it's a really important thing. The context that the advertising is delivered is as important as many people as you deliver it to. So that you can have a negative brand or a negative reach effect, which is actually something that Hearts and Science and the Wharton School did in the OMD umbrella. They found if you reach the same amount of people with the same ad, and crappy content versus professional content, the crappy content gives you a negative brand image and will actually hurt your campaign. And they called it negative reach, and I think it was a smart way to look at it. And they measured it over a long period of time. It's great. It's the right way to think about your advertising buying mindset and the way that you go to market and sell. Content comes first, distribution matters as well, and at the end of the day, you want to represent that brand in the best possible light. And as you reach you reach consumers, and you reach them at high levels with a great impression, then you have the ability to convert, and that's when direct response meets branding. And that conversion can be measured in our world. It can be measured all day long, right? It's IP delivered. It can connect in any level of spotlight tag, post-impression report, recency and frequency to conversion. All of those things are great because it's all connected. And you still need that representation of a barcode scan or some other lift study that a Millward Brown or a Nielsen can offer to augment what's happening when the click doesn't actually convert at that moment. But it's still a better mousetrap than what exists today in linear TV, where there's really no connection to the back end other than an extrapolated sample from like a Nielsen Catalina or an IRI barcode scan or something like that.
When we're going downstairs, you were mentioning about your upfronts. Being Vevo, you get to invite sort of celebrities like Ludacris and there was somebody else you mentioned.
G-Eazy.
G-Eazy. I don't know who G-Eazy is.
G-Eazy was good. Yeah. We had Run the Jewels last year and Wyclef. We've had all sorts of folks. Yeah, that's the benefit of the
that's
music
basically
business.
Get in your buyers, get them drunk, push them out with empty checkbooks. What is it? I think the dynamic in the US has changed a little bit more quickly in Europe towards brands buying directly. When you're running these events, I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about the events themselves, but how much revenue now are you seeing from brands buying from you directly as opposed to via agencies? Is it? I don't know if you.
We measure it. No, we definitely measure it. The way I've always set up businesses because of the efficiency of the business. Relative low number of salespeople, relative high number of dollars that are brought in by each person, has been to organize it by holding group first. I've always been a big believer in the agency model, even though it is stressed to high heaven today. It still is the most efficient way for a sales organization to approach the market and get large dollars in short periods of time. And I think that holds true. And it's also, it allows you to draft off of television, right? And when you're in a shared sales market with one of the largest sales organizations in the world, like YouTube, you don't play their game, right? You specifically run the other direction. You run away. It's like the Monty Python Holy Grails. You run away. But if you run at television and you do things that augment their offering and you do it in a way that's synonymous with their recency, with their reach and their currency and their measurement methodology, it doesn't hurt anyone. It's actually just a rising tide type of situation. So from an agency perspective, yes, they're certainly under siege. I actually would say that the agency business is a bit more taxed by top 5 consulting firms today than they are necessarily a direct to brand. The only thing that the brands I think are doing that it really requires you to go to them is branded content, content creation, different types of social media or social content distribution. And in those worlds, in the businesses that I've been in that have that as either a component of their sale or as the thing that they sell, it's actually very hard to go to an agency to sell that stuff because it's not working dollars. It's mostly production, and it doesn't equate properly to a currency that a media buyer could buy. So in that case, direct brand works well. When you get to buying reach and buying media and buying TV, I really think that the agencies are best suited for that because they're aggregating multiple clients across the board and they're bringing that weight of negotiation to the table, and it helps us be more efficient in the way that we sell. And it helps us take inventory off the table in larger chunks so we can plan appropriately and forecast. And it allows us to see where the stress is on a given demographic and where the opportunity is that we could possibly lower a price for a demo that's currently undersold or potentially has some level of seasonality that we can take advantage of either at a higher price or a lower price. So I'm super supportive of that agency model and that upfront model. And it doesn't have to mean the agency says, I'm going to give you X amount of money up front. It's really their ability to go out and understand the deal that you have, the price that you have with them, and advocate that throughout their clients, on an ongoing basis. And just from a marketing, point of view, that you're top of mind and you're recommended and you're approved, right? You're approved. It's not another line of thinking or another decision that a frontline media planner or buyer has to make. Their jobs are busy enough. There's fewer of them than there was before, and so they need to think less and do more. And the investment groups at agencies allow them to do that in certain ways.
If my sponsors could cover their ears for the next bit. Publishers are constantly talking about the ad tech tax, also known as paying for services. Yeah. But what do you make of the ad tech ecosystem's relationship with you guys as a publisher today? Or with publishers generally?
Yeah, it's another place where the digital world really screws it up, I think. It's far too complicated, it's far too fragmented, it's far too expensive. I think that it's another place where I point to television and I'm like, wow, that's so much simpler and so much cheaper, right? It's Barb, it's Nielsen, and see you later. So I think that, you hear all sorts of things. 60 cents on a dollar is spent in ad tech when you're delivering media. That seems nuts to me. That seems super nuts. But I get the reason why. Because the fear of brand safety, the fear of fraud, the fear of just lack of viewability. It's unfortunate, but those are all things that the internet has put on itself. They've had bad practices, bad behavior, sold a bunch of crap over a real long period of time. And yeah, you need all those technology companies to make sure that you're not buying crap, or that at least the crap that you're buying you're not paying for. Me, if I'm a media buyer, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And that's how we always think about designing our businesses. Design your business the way the buyer would want to buy it. Don't protect them from the thing that you're selling them. And that to me is just kind of a ridiculous self-fulfilling prophecy of mediocrity, right? It's a terrible way to go about running a business that takes the high road. Sell the thing in its absolute best form. Sell only ads that complete. Sell only ads that are in view. Sell only ads against content that's brand safe. Put a television rating against it, and anything that doesn't rate in that continuum, don't sell it. Don't sell it. It's not sellable. Or sell it to someone who deserves to buy it. Sell it like television does. Sell alcohol after 11 p.m. Sell it on TVMA or TV mature audiences. Do it behind an age gate. Do it in the way that you should do. Act appropriately, act responsibly as a sales organization. And if it's not opportunity that you think a buyer would want to buy each and every day, don't sell it to them.
Okay, just to round stuff off, we'll allow you to give 3 pieces of advice to anyone selling OTT inventory or moving in that direction. What would be your 3 hot tips or secrets to success?
There's a big disclaimer that goes along with me giving advice. No, I think that was a big piece of advice. Sell the right thing first. Price it appropriately, but sell your best inventory first. And yes, there's a level of packaging with the rest, but make sure that the rest doesn't include cobwebs and skeletons, right? Make sure that you're not bundling up crap with something good. I think for OTT, you have to really sell with research. I don't think anyone understands what OTT is. It's kind of a blanket term. You have to really put your audience in context, put the platforms that people are consuming in context. Be transparent. Don't just say that an impression is an impression is an impression and you can buy it fluidly across all these platforms. Put it into context. Show people what it is. Show people where it's being consumed. Show people the demographics. I thought CNN did something really cool, risky but cool, where they unbundled their inventory. They used to make you buy their linear network along with their OTT network and predominantly mobile for CNN. But they started to parse it out and did it in a self-serving way, which is they recognized that people who were consuming news in digital ways was a much lower demographic, younger demographic, I should say. and that they consumed much smaller pieces of content at higher volume. So they had to sell it in a different ad package, lighter ad load, sell it in a different demographic, and price it differently. But what they were able to do, which I thought was cool, was they were able to look at, they sold it at a higher price to what their linear network was, which was a super old male audience, but they sold it at a lower price. But in the context of comparing it to what you could buy that demographic in television, it was actually super efficient. And they cannibalized themselves a little bit there, but they sold the right thing in the right way to people that wanted to buy it, and they told them up front what they were going to get, and they measured it on the back end and told them what they got. And I think that's super smart and a good way to continue to disrupt the businesses that you have and just to think about them in different ways. The easiest thing is not always the right thing, right? You know, and they took a hard road to try to put that audience in context, measure it, price it, and get people to transact on it in a different way. And it worked out well. It worked out well. It's in high demand, and they're in short supply. Again, good stuff to do. And then the last thing I would say is that, you know, plan ahead. I think I look at YouTube. If you look at any distribution platform since the beginning of time, whether it's radio that lent itself into television, broadcast television that lent itself into cable that lent itself into the internet, and then, you know, the portals, right? Yahoo, AOL, MSN. Then you go into search, Google, social, Facebook, video, YouTube. These things all have a run, and those runs are getting shorter. So that YouTube first strategy, one of the things that I always say about our YouTube first strategy is that it's a strategy for as long as YouTube matters the most. And that strategy will shift to the next thing that matters the most. Is it Snapchat because it's short form? I don't know. Is it Instagram? Is it something we haven't even heard of? Probably. But it won't be YouTube forever. Not by a long shot. It wasn't Comcast forever. You know, it wasn't NBC forever. And so you have to really plan ahead and try to see around corners. And instead of reacting, which I think is the legacy of all big media businesses, whether it's television or music or film, they just do things after the fact. Be ahead of the curve and make some bets. Those bets might cost you a little bit of money, but if you make bets and you're on the front end of that tide and you can start to show the growth that the platform represents, not your content or your advertising, but the platform represents, that's a growth story you can take to the advertisers and create that supply and demand continuum again. And as you get those, you know, virtual MVPDs, if it's a Hulu or a Sling or a Sky Q, great. That's the tail that wags the dog. And you will have a much better go-to-market packaging opportunity than you do by just selling things after they're already popular.
Well, our glasses are empty. We managed to get through all our wine. Kevin, thanks very much. Give Kevin a round of applause, please. Cheers.